please. So tonight we're talking about attachment and relationships in family daycare. All of you in this area of our sector play such an important role in the lives of children and families. So I commend you on your work, and I certainly am thrilled that we're going to be in dialogue around this topic tonight. There is so much actually happening in this space. Before we do officially commence the content for tonight's workshop, I would like to acknowledge country. I'm zooming into you from Wurundjeri country in Melbourne, Victoria. And I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, pay my respect to Aboriginal and Zenadeth Cares elders, past and present, with a continuing connection to land, sea, sky, and community. So I always like to use for PD in my pocket the sea turtles picture by Gary Purchase. So why are we talking about this? I think because there are so many initiatives out there in our sector that are supporting children to have the very best outcomes and to thrive. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Nicole Talarico, and I've been in the sector for 30 years. And I am predominantly really speaking a lot over the last few years about child safety, but safety can't happen in our spaces if we don't think about felt safety. And that really ties into tonight's topic, because we're talking about all the types of safety that is required to be able to have a strong felt attachment and a good, strong relationship with the caregivers around us. And so we're going to really take on board all of the information that you have given us. You're also going to see an interview that I did with two amazing New South Wales family day care educators. So we're going to try and play that for you. We did a little practice run and it seemed to be playing okay, so fingers crossed. But again, we're recording this session and you will be able to access that video. So what did we learn? In asking a few questions prior to tonight's session, one of the things I really wanted to know about is how confident you are as professionals in your spaces, in your environments, in identifying and responding to signs that a child may need a stronger attachment, some support in attaching, and that could have made you think about separation anxiety and children that are particularly looking for comfort in your spaces. So you can see, and I was really impressed with these results, 60% of you were really very confident in being able to identify and respond to children that were showing you that they needed some comfort and may need to seek your support in the space. How strongly do you agree that building secure, trusting relationships with children supports their overall development and well-being? I am super pleased with this one. Nearly 80% of you had said that, yes, you absolutely strongly agree that strong, secure, trusting relationships supports children's overall development and well-being. So the remainder of our pie chart here, I'm hoping that at the end of the session tonight that you are able to actually move yourself into that strongly agree section so that you do gain some insight into how you could recognise the importance of your role in the work that you do. Oops, sorry. So how often do you intentionally plan or adapt routines and interactions to strengthen positive, consistent relationships with each of the children that you are working with in your spaces? And again, a really strong result there. 62 of you said that you always think about working with intentionality in your environments to be able to work flexibly and adapt your routines and interactions to support children to have those really strong, positive, consistent relationships with you. And the last question is that I wanted to know whether or not you would agree that multiple strong attachments are possible for young children. And a huge result there. Almost 90% of you said that, yeah, multiple attachments are absolutely possible. And so that pleases me, because particularly in the work that I do in the education and care sector, but I'm also quite heavily involved in family violence and looking at children who have trauma backgrounds. And it's really important to recognise the pivotal role that safe and secure people can play in children's lives. And so, yes, absolutely, multiple strong attachments are absolutely possible. So for those of you that have engaged in work with me before or undertaken webinars with me, you'll know that I have a book, Asserting a Culture of Child Safety. And as I mentioned at the beginning of tonight's session, this topic absolutely correlates to this culture that we're talking about. It's very much about the environments that we create. And so you get to quote yourself when you've got a book. And the undeniable key influencer to children thriving is the extent of interrelation between children's influencing environments. So what are we going to cover? We have an hour and a half together, and then we'll allow some time for questions. But we're going to be really looking at attachment theory and the importance of attachment theory, forming and maintaining secure relationships. And we're going to look at what nurturing environments really do look like and what they can look like. So hopefully you can gain some more practical ideas for what else can be possible in your spaces. I always think that timing is everything. And this morning when I was having my coffee, I was reading the paper and I noted an article that was talking about a world first study, actually, that has just been undertaken here in Australia. And it was talking about the importance of wiring of children's brains. And it also lent into the rewiring of children's brains. And we know that two really significant periods of brain development is first and foremost that infancy period. But then the other significant period for children is when they move into their early adolescence, so young people. So this attachment and secure connection is something that is so important for children and young people of all ages, but really essentially critical for really young children from birth, as we know, birth to 5 years, and those subsequent years beyond that are still super important. So Dr. Sylvia Lynn, who is actually the head researcher at Melbourne's Oregon Clinic, they were actually undertaking this study, and they were looking at they did some MRIs on children's brains pre and post their parents or key significant people in those children's lives undertaking some skill development in how you can actually establish really strong, secure, responsive interactions. And they noted a significant difference between the MRIs that were taken pre the adults doing the course and post. And what they noted was that the brain actually was less active. It wasn't firing off a stress response when stressful events had occurred after the parents had undertaken this study. What they noted is that the changes in the prefrontal cortex of the brain were actually quite significant, and the children's brains were actually in a much better, stronger position to be able to not become alert to stress response. And the key to this study, And you can actually have a look at it. It was actually published I wrote it down here so I could tell you, in the JAMA Pediatrics Journal. But what they were looking at was the significant difference in the way that adults responded to children at, key significant moments in their everyday. And the difference was that they had been encouraged through their learning to be responsive to children and to allow them to feel the emotions without shame and blame, not trying to fix the problem. Let children experience the emotions that they were feeling, even if they were uncomfortable. And I thought that's actually fantastic, because tonight we're talking about how important responses are to children and how we can actually help rewire, and provide much greater prospects for children to thrive in their emotional regulation and mental health outcomes moving throughout their lives. So the work that we actually do in this space is something, as I said, it's world first research. And what we're talking about tonight really aligns with what this study is saying. And it's groundbreaking. I guess we as educators know how important interactions are with children. But when we're thinking about being able to tune in and attune to children, it provides them with greater mental health implications, more positive outlooks for later in life. So if we are going to talk about attachment, and you'll see throughout tonight that there'll be some links to other documents that support what it is that we're talking about and what has informed this session with you tonight. I think attachment is how we're going to begin this session, because it's a concept that is often very underrated. I mean, if we just use that example that I just gave you of that study, that's groundbreaking research. But this is information that we somewhat know, which goes to prove that attachment and the whole concept and dialogue around it and the professional development around it really is underplayed. And so I'm really pleased that we're actually amplifying this subject, because we want to do everything that we can to create these really positive attachments in children so that we can facilitate these healthy brains and bodies, if you like. Ideally, we want the most secure attachment possible. But I did want to make that point that it doesn't matter what phase of attachment or what stage, or as we go through and talk about these types in a moment, if you start to reflect about the children that you have in your environments, just because they seem to be displaying a certain type of attachment that you might notice between them and their families, their key members of their families, or perhaps you might start to think about the relationship that they have with you, that doesn't mean that it's locked in and fixed. I think the beauty of starting off this session with talking about how, we often talk about the plasticity of a brain, and the greater the exposure to really rich, positive environments, the more likely it is that the brain, it's quite malleable. It can rewire itself to more stronger attachment styles. And that means that the bodies are going to respond accordingly. So it's quite clever. There is an absolute connection between brain and body. And when you're talking about this neuroscience space in our sector for professional development, it really tunes into the impact that our environments and the people within them have on the internal as well as the external. What would you call it? It's almost like how that body takes and absorbs what's going on for them. So if we're thinking about significant types of attachment, you might have heard of what we've been talking about, the most strongest, the most desirable type of attachment, which is a secure attachment. But not all children are going to be able to have had experiences that are going to show you that they come to your space with really strong templates in their brains for attachment. And this is where you come in. So when we're talking about a secure attachment, that is yourself as an educator and other significant people, because we've already established, and you guys also told me that you know that children can absolutely connect to more than one person in their life that can provide this kind of responsiveness. But we're looking at really consistent, reliable, warm, responsive interaction. This teaches a child that you or other key people in their life are trustworthy because we're attuned. We're really mindful of what's going on for that child, and they learn that you and other significant people are safe people. When children feel strong attachment to people, then what you're most likely to see is a child that is quite curious and happy to want to explore their space. If we actually look at an anxious type of attachment style that a child might be showing you, the other word that can be often thrown around when we're talking about anxious types is ambivalent. So when you're looking at this type of attachment, it's inconsistent. The caregiver in their home or you as the professional educator may not have been as consistent with the attunement, knowing what's going on for that child. So when we're talking about anxious attachments, sometimes they can be responsive and loving. Other times there might be opportunities that have arisen that might actually tell the child that their key caregiver is distant and not always responsive, certainly not aware and meeting their needs in a consistent, regular way like they do with a secure attachment. So that child starts to feel a little unsure about the people in their world, and then you start to perhaps see some clingy type behaviors, a bit resistant. And so that's kind of how we would describe an anxious attachment. If we're looking at a fearful attachment, sometimes that's also called a disorganized attachment. And what that tells us is that the templates for that child, the experiences that they've had, are probably quite a bit confusing. It's the most intense type of attachment style. It's the most complex attachment style. That child may look like they really, well, they crave that emotional connection with somebody, but it's also they're conflicted in that. They want the closeness, but they're actually very afraid of the closeness. So children that have experienced significant trauma or abuse may show quite prominent disorganized attachment styles. They have relationship instability. Their emotions can be extremely intense. They've got a lot of inner conflict going on, these children with these type of attachment styles. What they learn to have to do is self-soothe because they struggle to do that, but they learn to self-soothe because their environment is not reliable in really any way, shape or form. They might often look a bit disoriented or a bit dazed. It's really hard work when somebody's experiencing this type of attachment style. And so the other attachment style that I want to briefly overline here before we move into the next part to really unpack some of this is the avoidant, which is often called a dismissive attachment type. Children, again, you'll see a little bit of a correlation with these two types. There is an avoidance. They do want the connection, but really they have learnt that it's probably just easier to not make those close connections. They may not really have much distress if a significant person in their life, such as yourself, leaves the room or goes out of sight. That might not really distress them because they've actually learnt to emotionally self-protect. They've learnt that expressing feelings is probably really not that safe, and it's not really that effective because the response is not warm and encouraging. So quite a number of similarities when you're sitting down here. This high avoidance end is what you start to see in behaviours for children. They're avoiding that connection. They're quite fearful of the connection. But when we come up here, as I talked about earlier, you've got low avoidance where you've got the want to have these connections with someone in a secure attachment type. That is really something that is really enjoyable and wanted. Whereas, you know, it's still wanted, absolutely. In often all of them, children want that connection. It's not easy to accept. And sometimes it's easier to just self-accept and self-soothe. But in an anxious, ambivalent state, like we talked about before, it's just inconsistent. So you've got strong here, you've got strong and warm sometimes, but quite a bit of inconsistency. But in these other types down here, you're really looking at not a lot of reliability and consistency with the key person or people in that child's life. So you'll see that there is a link here to the National Quality Standards, Quality Area 5, which is all about relationships with children. What we know is that relationships with children that are responsive, respectful, and promote children's sense of security and belonging help to facilitate much stronger, reliable attachments, which is why we really aim to try and work in a way that is going to align with a strong, secure attachment style. So if we're going to expand on theory a little bit more, what we have become really knowledgeable about is how does attachment actually form? And so there are a number of theorists, Bowlby, Atkinson, there are many, many theorists that have contributed to work to help us establish an understanding about what creates a certain attachment style for a child. What we know is that how much a child is able to learn, develop, grow, and enhance their understandings of the world around them and themselves is directly related to how safe they feel in their environment with the people around them. We do know that initially there was this idea that people had to have access to their physiological safety, those real material essential needs, the fact that they needed clean, fresh air, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep, all the essentials. And then the idea was that you had to have these things first to then be able to seek some level of safety and stability with the people around a child, if we're using the attachment and how children develop attachment. Then and only then it was believed that they could really start to feel that sense of belonging and love and connection. And it's then with all of these things that children's sense of self can be boosted and they can start to build on that confidence and achieving things and feeling great about that and respecting others, that need to be a unique individual, the esteem. And then at the peak of the pyramid, the idea was that that child can actually build and really think about self-actualization. We've expanded with contemporary understandings and theory since this traditional model came about. And what we know is that people, children, pursue multiple needs simultaneously. We've started to really think about that in our spaces. Quite often, we can't just, in a linear fashion, build upon our needs to then grow and enhance and thrive. Different societies may prioritize needs differently, so we're really mindful of our cultural responsiveness to that understanding. But we also know that individuals and communities in collaboration together allow a child to be able to build on a whole number of levels of this pyramid at the same time. Sorry, I'm going to just go back there. So what we're actually talking about really does align to our learning framework. So we've got our early years learning framework version 2, most current revised version, as well as the My Time, Our Place version 2 as well. This can really give us and expand on what we're talking about here, where children can have a great, strong sense of well-being. And we align with practices in those two frameworks. So when we're talking about forming relationships, because we know that significant, strong relationships is not something that only a biological or a significant other within the family unit can provide. We know that there are other significant people in children's lives, and they may come into a child's life at varying different phases of their life. Attachment has been described by John Bowlby, that theorist I mentioned previously, as attachment is the deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another across time and space. And I think that's actually the quote that is going to set the scene quite nicely for what we continue to talk about tonight, because I'm talking about the bonds and the connections that we have as professional educators across time and space. And I'm going to highlight space here because our family daycare environments are really essential in curating a nurturing space. So yes, absolutely, the people in spaces are significant. You as the educator, the other children around a significant individual absolutely play an important role, but the environment itself, the setting, indoor and outdoor, and the resources and everything in those settings collaborate together and combine to help a child feel that sense of safety and security. So when we're forming relationships, we think about our interactions, our engagement, and what our space can actually tell a child about how important they are in our setting. And this is why attachment matters. We know for children to have that strong sense of well-being, they need a really strong sense of trust. And that's not something, particularly for children, that builds like that. Often, if we were thinking back to those types of attachment that I talked to you about earlier, regardless of where a child might be sitting in the attachment that they're possibly aligning to, if we're thinking about how we can enhance and build on a child's attachment for their growth and perhaps healing, you might very well be one of the strongest attachments that they have in their life. What we're actually building is stepping stones, really small, consistent stepping stones to help that child build trust with you, that emotional safety, that sense of belonging in your surroundings. So regardless of where a child is at, what we can do is enhance their understanding of themselves and the people around them through our experiences, to build that child's self-compassion, to start to recognize that their emotional responses, their behaviors sometimes might be as a result of a protective fear response. Remember when I was talking about that type of attachment where the child might have really high, intense responses and behaviors and feelings and emotions from that disorganized attachment style? What they might experience is lots of big emotions in their day, and that's their body trying to protect them. And that's almost an automatic response that happens in the body and the brain. It's protective. But when we start to understand, accept with compassion and empathy, children start to experience an understanding significant person, because your lens in which you're viewing children and their behaviors and their actions is one that is understanding. It helps them to realize that they are worthy of all of their emotions, even if some of them are not as ideal as others, that we can improve children's attachment, this sense of trust, emotional safety, and belonging with us in incremental steps by supporting them and holding space and being present. Consistent, safe relationships is how we do that, to help children recognize their significance in this world alongside other people, with other people. So when we're talking about secure, the importance of secure relationships, we're talking about being able to provide spaces for children's growth, for their learning and their development, to support them to thrive. The circle of security for secure attachments is something that you may have heard about. It's quite popular when we're talking about strong attachment and building that. We're really talking about here responsive adults for building trust, that emotional safety, and that belonging. So if we're going to think about how we can foster these strong relationships for emotional safety, we're supporting children to navigate encounters in their world. So regardless of where they're at, regardless of what attachment style they might be displaying, we're going to try and strengthen their connection to us and the children around them. We're going to support them through all of the experiences that happened in their day, that we're going to hold space to understand and make an effort to understand and look invested in what's going on, what might be going on for a child, because we don't always know, but that's that attunement where we're really invested in what's going on for a child in our space. And communication is not always about talking. We can engage and notice and observe and attune to children without any spoken words. It's that really rich, connected noticing that can make a world of difference, this non-verbal communication. I often refer to it as the behavioural landscape that we provide, because if I'm looking really closed off myself and not happy and uninterested or frustrated, then that's actually not going to give children an indication that I'm present, that I'm holding space for them, that I care. It's about our posture and our tone of voice and our facial expressions. So often when I'm working with children in a setting that are experiencing outbursts or challenging behaviours, when I go in and that child has never seen me before, I actually go in with these key things first. I've got to actually make sure that my body is positioned, my behavioural landscape is positioned in as relaxed fashion as possible, that my tone of voice sounds warm and it's not sharp, reactive. that my facial expressions are as soft as possible, because it's that energy that I'm going to bring into the space that children will pick up on. It tells children that I care, that I'm present, I'm holding space for what's going on for them. Because ultimately, without felt safety, that child is not going to be able to lean in so I can share felt safety with them. It almost works as like a mirror, and it's almost an energy field that says, I am holding space for you because I care. This is not your fault how you are currently feeling. It is about you, the people around you, and the environment that this particular moment might have let you down momentarily. But this is where we as consistent educators can come in and be responsive and care. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry that you can't find your toy. How can we find this teddy bear? It's about the body language. If a child is going to feel comfortable with you getting down to their level and having that calmness in their chaos because they've lost their teddy bear and they're not sure. And that's where it starts to pile on pile on pile, the worry. I need my teddy bear. Where is it? I haven't got it. And that's where you start to have that internal panic. But when we're able to say, oh my goodness, I'm sorry that you've lost your teddy bear. How can we go about finding this? It tells the child that you care, that you're available, that you're empathetic. You're sorry that this is the case, but how can we work together to be able to make this space better for you? So this is where we can support children with challenges in everyday experiences, whether it be like that example of their favourite comfort toy being misplaced, that they might be building with the blocks, and everybody knows it sometimes starts off okay, but before you know it, those blocks wobble. That can be so disappointing. That can be really frustrating, and that can cause great anger, particularly if your buddy next to you has accidentally knocked your tower over and you've been working so hard. Or there's only a couple of balls and this happens to be the last one available and I ain't giving that up, but somebody's trying to snatch it off me. All of these everyday encounters can bring about such huge responses for children. And so, you know, we can make a huge list. If you were to think for a second about all the things that go on in your environments in every day, we could fill slide after slide with examples. The straw in the water bottle not working, you know, that sharing of equipment, can't get my sock on, my shoe is falling off, my shoe has come undone. There are so many encounters that present as challenges for children in our everyday. But when we are attuned and we're noticing and we're observing, we can come in as that reliable, consistent. Those actions and behaviors from us are so important in that moment for how we respond to children. And we don't, in fact, I actually think sometimes the words are not the most important part. Children certainly don't need the words to tell us what they're feeling. We can see it, we can feel it. We're watching the experience. So it's about being able to almost share that energy of empathy with a child or children in your space. Because when we work this way, we are really amplifying the fact that people and place foster belonging. I haven't got my toy, things go on in my day, but guess what? Nicole is there for me. My friends, my peers are around me. They're experiencing with me. They might not be helping me in every encounter, but I think children are actually quite good at that too. They're quite responsive to distress of others. So you've got this environment, this close-knit environment in your settings that really do help to facilitate rich, nurturing environments for real positive self-regard. Because when we're able to co-regulate and experience a positive encounter, I might be quite sad, I might be quite frustrated, I might not be able to find that very special toy, but knowing someone had my back in space can actually give me an experience of reliability, of stability, of connection. And this tells me that I'm worthy, I'm important. I mean, I've experienced a bump in today's road, but somebody has actually validated what's going on for me and been present during my distress and been able to give me an experience that even though things are not going to plan for me today, that someone is here to catch me in those moments. And this starts to build my experience, my templates in my brain to remember what this experience felt like, the reliability. It helps me to remember that the next time, which might be an hour, it might be tomorrow, but the next time that this happens and you have been there to have my back, I'm building on top of the previous experience another positive interaction. And this helps me to thrive because I start to have these templates that things are going to be okay because there's people around me. This significant other, this family daycare educator is there with me to support me in my space amongst my friends. It's a collective space, and it is so very important. So let's reflect for a minute on how you actually support your families to make that transition in and out of your home. How do you make that as comfortable as possible? What we do know, and this is a quote out of the EYLF, relationships are strengthened when educators recognise and affirm children's home languages and cultural identities, and when they create culturally secure and safe places for children and their families. So every single child has a culture. Some have multiple elements to that culture. When children are encouraged to bring into the space who they are, what their identity is, what their identity as an individual is in connection with the identity of their family, then we know that that also is another element or another template, another example of where I have been validated. And we know that these relationships that occur between us as educators and children and families feel stronger, feel positive when we look at how we can see the other person, how we see the child, how we see the family, how we see their uniqueness, how we recognize that everybody has an individual identity. And when we're open to seeing that and we affirm it, then what children see is that my identity and my family's identity is welcome here, is not only just welcome and accepted, it's embraced, because this family daycare educator is affirming how important that is for me. Oh, look at all the hearts and thumbs up. I love that you guys are loving this. This is where we really talk about that cultural responsiveness and that identity. And as I said, everybody's is different, is slightly different, even if some are similar. Some are very significantly different. So what we're talking about here is creating this unique partnership between us as the educators in our environment and the partnership that extends to the children and the children's families. And this is where we create together this collaborative connection. It creates security. It creates a sense of trust, belonging, all those key things. That is what is required for strong attachment building. So we think about what it's like for children when they first come to your space, what it's like for their families. We are quite explicit, aren't we, as professionals doing our professional role. It's our ethical responsibility. It's our absolute, it's everything. This is why we work in this space, because we really enjoy being able to best support children in our environments with that connection to their home environment, so that we really foster that attachment formation to be able to then, this is where we talk about building and maintaining respectful relationships. That's what attachment's kind of about, really. It's a building of respectful, reciprocal relationships. And in this case, we're talking about between us as educators, families, and children. We value each other's knowledge, this reciprocity of sharing, valuing the knowledge of the family, valuing the knowledge of the educator as a professional in the sector for growth, learning, and development, culture and identity being upheld, child and family strengths acknowledged, valuing each other's roles as essential and pivotal. So we'll have strong relationships and strong attachments formed and being built upon. Communicating freely and respectfully. And how we do that is going to be very multifaceted. Verbal, non-verbal, that behavioural landscape. There are so many ways that we actually do that. We share decision-making that way about children's growth, learning, and their well-being. So again, when we're talking about our national quality standards, we're talking about building partnerships with our families. And there is so much diversity in family and community life here in Australia, which is such a fabulous thing. It means that we can broaden what our settings can, what they look like. So, children experience belonging, being, and becoming in so many different ways. Their home languages can be embraced. And again, if it's not the same as our first language, which fabulous if it does, but there might be variations depending on, parts of the country that you might be from, certain dialects, certain language groups. This is where we can really lean in to the wisdom and the knowledge of a family, and vice versa. English might not be a child and family's first language, but if it is yours, for example, this is where they will be leaning on you to be able to support that. So we're actually being able to support that bilingual environment with such great value for children's first home languages. Bringing this cultural way of knowing, being, and doing to their learning. And we're not doing it tokenistically. We're doing it in incremental stages, because remember when I first talked about building those stepping stones of trust? We don't whip a whole lot of resources in and go, fabulous, I've embraced your culture. We look at how do we learn and grow and develop in understanding so that we can keep enhancing our capacity for being able to enrich our spaces with the knowledge that we have, with the resources that we have, with the understanding that we have. And this is all about us being responsive. Culturally responsive practice and pedagogy is what we're embracing here to help facilitate those strong connections and attachments for children and their families. So this is about really bringing those cultural ways of knowing and the being, and as I said, the doing to children's learning. So what I've been talking about is really this working together in partnership. Children thrive when their families and their educators work together in partnership to support their learning, their development, their well-being. And as I said, this requires more than just simply acknowledging others and what they can possibly bring. This actually demands that we interrupt our view and see more clearly an open space for others to be able to be themselves, reveal their identity, and bring with them who they are and what they know and what their strengths are. And so they can actually enrich the relationship just as you do, coming from your space as the professional educator in your environment. So we work together to be able to afford these magnificently rich opportunities for growth, joy, for understanding. People can then unmask parts of their authentic self. We're not pretending. Attachment and strong relationships are not strong if they're not authentic. And so we're not masking and pretending to be people that we're not. We actually unmask to be able to reveal parts of our authentic self. And this is brilliant for children. So this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, children being valued and validated for what they are experiencing, regardless of whether it's a good feeling and a comfortable feeling. Because remember, when I go right back to that research I talked about at the start, when children are able to express and feel their emotions without somebody hovering over to try and fix what could be deemed as unnecessary, not appropriate, not accepted behaviours or actions in a space. Now, that's not to say that we tolerate children hurting each other or themselves or you as the educator, because sometimes explicit challenging behaviours can look like that. What we're saying is, regardless of what's going on for somebody, that is how they're feeling. And only through connection and safety can we be able to build and rewire and change and dampen down explicit big emotions and stress responses. Because remember, the MRI that was shown on those children before, those educators, those adults, had done the work to understand just how critical their response is to children. We can see after that exposure to connected, emotionally safe, empathetic responses, we know that the MRI proved it, didn't it? That the stress elevation and the extreme response is dampened down a bit. That prefrontal cortex is not on fire. So this is how we can actually facilitate really strong, authentic relationships in our spaces, attachment in our spaces. And what it also does is, as I mentioned earlier, it allows children to enhance their individual self-worth. And when that's feeling good, because we all know as adults, when you feel good, you're more likely to open up your behavioural landscape, to enjoy your surroundings and the people around you and explore and experience new opportunities. You're thriving, right? And this is how it looks for children too. So all of these things can contribute to those really strong, healthy relationships and attachment building and forming in our spaces when we do it in partnership. Respectful relationships is what we have been talking about, and part of the expectation, part of the ASEQA record keeping in your family daycare services is that you have records of assessment, not any different to other sector types when I say that assessment of how children are going, the risks to their safety, their health, and I've put it in italics here, their well-being should be part of what you are recording, because children's safety, health, and well-being is essentially what we're talking about here too. We're talking about how we are enabling children and affording them the opportunity to have good experiences in our spaces. And so we record any risk to that if it comes about. So now I'm going to share with you an amazing video of an interview I did with Anne-Marie Baxter and Kay Riley. And I know if they're on there, they're going to be covering their eyes because they're like, oh my gosh, particularly Anne-Marie, she was horrified at the thought that we're going to be playing this video, but it is so good. So I encourage you to stay with us to have a bit of a look, because I asked them some significant questions about what we've talked about thus far. And I'm really excited to be able to show you what some of these amazing family daycare educators have been able to contribute to this webinar this evening. Okay, and hi, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. I am Nicole Talarico, as you know, and we are really going to spend the next little while having a chat about really your professional roles as family daycare educators. So I have a series of questions that I know you have seen, but we'll just go through and have a bit of a chat so that we can gather some really insightful information to help all the fellow family daycare educators out there gain a little bit of insight into, I guess, attachment and relationships and what that actually looks like in practice. So I might just quickly hand over to you, Anne-Marie, to give a little bit of an intro of your role.
For me, I think it's supporting not only the child, the families. I think that's my role. Like every child that comes into my house is actually, to me, part of my family. And I like to build that relationship with them. But I also like to make sure that there's boundaries set so that, families know, exactly how far they can sort of push things, because sometimes you do have families that will take you for granted and try and I guess overstep the role,
so
and
saying like a little bit of
service.
Navigating that professional, it's in your home, there's still a duty of care with ethical responsibilities and professional standards that we need to uphold. Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And Kay.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Kay, as you know, and I run my family daycare under IDFS, which is Grow Family Daycare.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. And Kay, how long have you been a family daycare educator?
I'm in my 15th year.
Oh my goodness, amazing. You must love it very much. And I'm pretty sure from that amount of years, you have so many families that have been part of your family daycare. And what about you, Anne-Marie? How long have you been an educator for?
I've been an educator for about 20 years. So,
amazing.
And I
always in family daycare?
I actually had a year doing playgroup facilitator for a scheme, but no, family daycare is exactly where I like to be. So on the ground with the children.
Amazing. So many wonderful memories, I'm sure. Okay, let's get into these questions. I'm zooming in from Wurundjeri country and pay my respects to elders past and present. And the beauty of our country means that we can really appreciate what our First Nations people have been doing for so many thousands of years to preserve and be great custodians of the land. So let's move into question one. Strong relationships support children to navigate encounters in their world. So, how do you actually begin the formation of a meaningful relationship as a family daycare educator if you have new children and families coming to you? What do you do to actually start that process of strong relationship building? I might move over to you, Anne-Marie, first, if you want to.
For me, I start the process at interview. I try and get as much information as I can about the children, the background, who's important in their life, what their likes, dislikes are, and just try and start the foundation of it at interview to get as much information as I can to support them when they do start.
Yeah, and tell me, I'm curious, do you often have interviews in person at your home, or would that be?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
So you actually meet
all
the
my
family?
all my families before they actually start come for an interview, and I have a startup information book that I go through with my families, and I talk about my fees, and I talk about, when your child's sick and if I'm on holidays, and all the groundwork starts then. And I start forming, a relationship with the families, but also with the child. I always make sure the child comes for that interview.
Right.
And it's there that I sort of start the formation of, developing that relationship, but also setting boundaries with the families so that they know my expectations, and I'm also getting their expectations on the day.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is that really strong foundation of transparency and expectation. And so that way everybody is really clear about the family daycare environment right from the beginning, which is a really good starting point, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. And how about you, Kay? How does it look for you in your first initial stages of forming strong relationships with families?
Yeah, same as Anne-Marie. I like to let the parents know what I expect from them and what they can expect from me.
Yeah.
I like to start with short visits before their actual start date.
Ah, okay, great.
They can come and have a bit of a, get used to me and me get used to them. And I find that's a little bit easier on a child.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference if the child is actually coming for that interview too, because no doubt families, when they are commencing at an education and care service, such as family daycare, but they want their child's initial response.
Exactly, their reaction to me. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very important. And Kay, when you say that they might come for short visits, is that throughout a couple of weeks, or what might that look like?
Well, that will depend on the parents, of course, because they might be time poor as well.
Yes, true.
So it might only be a couple of hours each week, just till the starting date. But
and obviously families stay with their child for those initial orientation type visits. Great.
Do we want to go over ratios?
This is very, very true. So you would absolutely want your family staying until their official start date. Absolutely.
Right.
And Anne-Marie, do you find that families want to spend quite a few visits with you in your environment before they start, or what does that look like?
I haven't really experienced that. Like, if a parent asked, I'd be okay with it and fine with it. But I find that parents tend to just not really. There are parents, I guess, that do, but I haven't experienced it.
Yeah, okay. So they might come for their first
first
time
interview.
With you, stay for a little bit until the child is feeling comfortable for them to go. Okay.
Yeah, I encourage at interview, I tell my parents too that when they do come in to drop their child off, it's better to drop and go, because I've found, like, over the years, for the child, it's harder for them to settle if the parent's there.
Sure. And I think from probably because you have laid those strong foundations of knowing what that child likes and their dislikes, you're quite insightful and well informed, ready for when they come, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, that's right. Or at least I try to be. So
yeah. So that's actually a beautiful, beautiful segue into our next question, because I wanted to ask you both how you support families to make the transition in and out of your home as comfortable as possible. So I guess in what you were saying, Anne-Marie, that first initial contact or ongoingly, the approach that you take with your families is it's best to arrive, drop children off and go as swiftly as possible to allow them time to settle. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And I, like when they come in, like I greet them and I greet the families, and over time they get to know, your routine, and if you're consistent with what you do, you become that safe place because they see that you're consistent, just in as simple as, your mannerisms when you open the door, or your behavior and that sort of stuff, so that they become very reassured with that.
Yeah, it's familiar. There's that level of confidence. And how about you, Kay? What does transitioning in and out of your home look like for your families and children?
Yeah, that depends on the child.
Yes. I'm already thinking, I've got a couple of other things I might want to ask here. Yeah. So if it's I know I have 4 children, and I know when they were little, they tended to not want to separate from me. And so I'm just anticipating here, had we been in a family daycare environment, I could almost imagine that I'd almost need you to come out to the car almost. So what does this look like for a child that perhaps is struggling to transition from home in their car, or if they're walking? I'm not sure. That's a whole other issue, isn't it? What might that look like then?
I prefer the parent just go.
Yeah.
Because the child tends to settle a lot quicker when mum's not there.
Sure. And so would you tend to greet them at your front door, or would there be?
Yeah, definitely. When they've got to bring them to the gate, because I might have other children here, so I can't take them out to pick another child up. So
absolutely. Okay, interesting.
Using positive language, and talk about the friends who might be there, and
I can imagine
need a hug.
Yes.
I'll just like to be left alone. So
you really start to pick up on those cues.
You know the children, after a little while.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what are some of the key aspects of your home-based education and care setting that support children with that sense of belonging? So you've both talked about being consistent and familiar to the children upon arrival. Once they do come inside, and when you say they tend to settle more quickly once their families have gone and left and gone about their day, what are some of the things that children gravitate to at your home that you know is a real focal point for comfort?
Well, they tend to have access to their own belongings. And, if you do, like if I have a child that's really struggling, I don't mind if a parent sends like a Snuggie or a familiar toy. I do have a rule in place when they're like get to an age that if they bring it, they share it. If they don't want to share it, they put it back in their bag. But just keeping your routine, I think, as familiar as possible. And I tend to have things like within my environment that are there all the time. So, my play kitchen and that sort of stuff. And you'd be the same, wouldn't you be, Kay?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So play kitchen, I can definitely say that's, when I was teaching, that was an area that I absolutely loved. Yeah. So you've both got play kitchens inside?
Yes. Well, mine's inside.
Mine's sort of mobile.
Great. Yeah, in or out.
One day, outside the next,
I love that. And so you find that children naturally will gravitate to that play kitchen?
Well, I think
Yeah, mine prefer craft.
Okay.
Yeah,
and so what could that
craft.
look like at your place? On kitchen table, dining table? What does that look
I
like?
have a small child's table, so
Okay.
yeah,
And
they
so
can
what?
just help themselves to, scissors, pencils, glue,
Fabulous.
lots of little crafty things, stickers, lots of stickers.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And I'm sure some of those stickers end up on the body too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And anything, what else other than our play kitchen in your space, Anne-Marie, would you say children, what are some of the things that helps to really settle?
I think just coming into the environment and, like once their bags are down and they put their drink bottles down and they just, I have an actual playroom that the children access and I have it set up all the time with, my play kitchen. There's a book nook,
Right.
and then I change out the toys, rotate. And so they tend to come in and they'll gravitate to what they want or what they need in that moment. And if someone is really, really upset and they need like a hug and a bit of comfort, well, then, I give them that as well. So they have, they
So you've got
they
those.
learn to have the environment the way that they need it to be. Yeah.
So I'm hearing you say that there's a bit of agency about what their day can look like in terms of the play provisions that are available. If it's more of a quiet reading nook, there's an option for that. So there's choice about the resources that they feel like they might want to commence playing with. Yeah. And is that
Definitely.
the same?
Yeah,
When you say they like the craft at your place, Kay?
Yeah, but they might go down and play with the babies, or the boys will dinosaurs.
Of course,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing there is choice and agency is certainly something to help children settle. And what about throughout the day? Oh, actually, I did want to go back to Anne-Marie, if I can. When you said that when they put their bag and their drink bottle down, is there a particular place that they store those things so then they know that that's where their personal belongings might? Yeah.
So their bags, I have just as they walk through the door, they sit all their bags along there, and then I have a child-sized table that they put all their drink bottles on, and they just come back and forth and actually, get their water whenever they want, and I just fill it up when needed, and so they have access to that all the time.
Yeah, so I think that's quite important, isn't it? We've got accessibility to resources, but we've also got children being able to access their drink bottles without having to ask you. Yeah. And is that the same at your house too, Kay? Children can access drink when they need. It's important, isn't it, that accessibility? We know that it's important for children to be able to have some autonomy around those things.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So what about throughout the day? So obviously there might be children that are needing either a sleep or a rest or a downtime. And so what do those kind of routine times look like? Whether it be eating, resting. Do you do that as a whole group, or is it more needs based?
I think it depends on the ages of the children. So if you've got a mixture of older children and younger children, then you do it more on a needs base. But if it's all the same age group, I tend to do it that we all eat together, then we all have rest time together, and do it that way. And at the moment, I have a mixed group. So some of my babies will be eating while the rest are playing, and then some are sleeping while the rest are eating. And you just work it out as you go, and just make sure, I just try and make sure all their needs are met all at once.
Yeah, and so I'm really hearing that level of attunement from you and that flexibility with adapting your environment according to what those needs are that you're noticing for the children. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And what do routines look like in your space, Kay?
Yeah, at the moment I'm pretty lucky. I've got a pretty good age group. They're all about the same.
Okay.
So, yeah, we eat together and we rest together, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm liking. I like that whole notion of having that connection to each other in the group. I would imagine that would be quite comforting for children.
Yeah, they're all doing the same thing, so
and they're resting together. And for many children that are not as keen for having a moment to wind down, knowing that their peers are doing that can sometimes be quite helpful.
Well, the older ones have a choice. They can read a book. They don't have to sleep. No one has to sleep.
No, and I love that. I love it that the children get a say about what that downtime looks like.
As long as it's a quiet thing.
Yes, because it is a long day, and I think that is the beauty of being in a smaller environment like yours. It's very home-like, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So tell me, when children are perhaps dysregulated, can you recall some times when children support each other with moments of distress or dysregulation? Like, can you give me some insight in what that might look like? Because I'm getting the idea here that you've got a very close-knit small community in your family daycare environment. So no doubt children become very familiar with each other. Does that help when children are experiencing moments where they might need some comfort or care?
They tend to actually sort of know and cue on to what each other needs. So sometimes you might get a child that, pats another child's back and says, "Are you okay?" Or they might just leave them because they know that at that time they need a bit of space. They don't always, go up and comfort, but they certainly can sort of gauge to a degree what each child needs. That's around them in their environment.
Yeah, they tend to cue into what those regulatory patterns almost look like, and ramping down that stress response. They're already aware of where that fear might be at. Is that the same for you, Kay?
Well, I think it's just trying to help the children understand why that child might be having these feelings, acknowledging and validating those feelings.
Yeah.
And just modelling calm behaviour.
Yeah, I think the environments that you're in, and they certainly give that, many opportunities to be able to really notice and practice responsive caregiving to each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love hearing that. That's fantastic. Tell me, when we're talking about that sense of felt safety and connection and belonging and care, all of this comes down to really strong relationships and attachment. So, and we know that is super important for children to be able to feel comfortable to challenge themselves and learn in their environments. But I'm curious to know what each of you, so I might start with you, Kay. What's one thing that you do really well that lets children know that they can trust you as a safe person?
Well, I don't know if it's something they can trust me as a safe person, but I believe in giving them I can confidence. Yeah. Like knowing that if they fail at something, try again.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to make a mistake. No, no one gets into trouble for making a mistake in their art. Like
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say then that you are reliable, I guess. No matter what the outcome of what they're doing, what they're trying, they know that you're there to support them. Would that be fair?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, letting them explore new techniques, and without worrying they're going to do something wrong.
Yeah,
it builds resilience.
Yeah.
Like,
I can hear
everybody
you.
fails.
And I love that building that I can attitude is such an important thing for children in the ages that we are working with our children in early childhood. So such an important attitude, I guess, for their caregivers to have, for their educators to have.
You challenge and support them to engage in and persevere at the tasks and their play. Just keep
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And what about you, Anne-Marie? What's something that you do that you know is something that tells children that you are a safe and trusted caregiver? Oh, not caregiver. We're educators, aren't we? We do the care and the professional caregiving, which is so important. And I think that they really value you as the teacher in your home. So what does that look like? What's something that you do?
I think for me it's that I'm consistent and I'm very transparent, and the children know that there's boundaries, and they also know, like, and I'm predictable, and they get the same me every day. And I think that in my environment is what, makes them feel safe. They have that, okay, well, we know what's going to happen next. There's no, we have the routine, and I work it around the children, and so they have that, and they have the nurturing side of me as well. So I think that's, what I sort of would say would be, something that I give all my families.
They can rely on you. They know that you're a reliable person in their lives when they come to family daycare. I love that. And I think that transparency is so important too. And like you said, your routine is based on children's needs, but that transparency to navigate through any adjustments and changes according to their needs, I imagine, is something that they have. And Kay, you're the same, where they really can rely on you to assist them with what's happening next.
That's right.
What they would like to happen next. It's that consistent person with them throughout the day.
Yeah, I think it's really important for them to have that too, because when families come in, they don't always have, consistency. Like when mum and dad are working and they're busy, and, they don't always have that consistent person. So for educators, we become that consistent person in that child's life.
Yeah, you might be the only person that is there for that long duration of time. A given day, for that many hours at a time. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so important. Well, look, I have loved getting to know what your environments are like. They sound like, well, I'm not surprised with the years of being family daycare. You have been educators in this part of our sector for so many years. And so I'm not surprised that you were able, we could probably chat all night about all of these things that you do. So I wanted to thank you both very much for spending time with me to really talk about what strong, respectful relationships look like for children and families in your spaces. And all I can say is what lucky children and families that spend time with you. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I feel that I have really nice families too, so I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So wonderful. We're just going to spend the next 10 minutes just talking through some very final things that are going to hopefully inspire your practice. So I'm just going to flip through to these couple of slides because I know that they might be something of value to you, and I know those ones. Don't panic. You're thinking, why does she go past those other ones? Because I know we've already covered that content in our prelude to the video. Thanks again to Kay and Anne-Marie. Let's talk for the next latter part of our session about what things might look like in your space and how we can further enhance the environments for these strong attachments. So I think what I heard Kay and Anne-Marie saying a lot was about flexibility, reliability, consistency, and all of that feeds into what we're talking about tonight. There might be a number of things that children end up escalating in their sense of comfort and well-being: clothing, noise, socializing, demands, exhaustion. So doing too much, getting so busy in the day, certain smells and tastes and textures. All of these things can contribute to when a child might be feeling calm and comfortable to a different level of escalation. What we can, though, do is raise that emotional connection and meet them where they're at. They might be feeling rough, grounded, edgy. There's lots of words to describe what could be going on. But what we do know is that if we provide bodies and brains with the resources that you heard Kay and Anne-Marie talking about, and practices that we engage in and peers engage in as well, we can, or that individual child can begin to feel comfortable and steady again. And that's okay to feel a little bit not okay, because there is those experiences that we might have previously had that tells us this is okay because my environment, the people and the place is perhaps going to help me or will. There's that internal dialogue that's going to tell us that I'm going to be okay. This process takes a lot of repetition, a lot of time, and a lot of co-regulation between us as the educators and children. And we integrate this emotional connection into all of our routines and our experiences every day. So when we're co-regulating with children, holding that space, we're supporting them through their regulatory experiences. We're providing that being in the space with strategies, tools, calming techniques to help ground them, soothe them, respond to them in times of stress, to give them that support when they're ready to be able to move through their day in the direction that they want to, because we've been able to dampen down that elevated stress to get back to comfortable. So this is that attunement that we talked about earlier, and it's about practicing ongoingly what a child might need throughout the day to feel safer. This is where we as caring educators come in, who notice and respond, and that those feelings flow. We're not expected. None of us can stay in the green zone all day. What we do is hold space for the flow of the emotions. If we can name them, great. If we can notice what's going on for ourselves, for children, for people around us, fantastic. We're able to let those feelings go in a safe space, in a reliable, connected space. And this practice of attunement helps us to determine what a child might likely need at certain times of their day. This brings great relief to children, just knowing that things are okay and will continue to be okay. So children's outbursts essentially become calls for comfort. That's the way we look at them, through that lens of care, making sense of children's signals to us, that cry out or that show of tears or that kind of retreated persona. All of these things are when we are what we notice when we attune to a child. These behaviors alert us that children need our help. I'm seeing lots of love hearts. We support children to repair. So these ruptures that happen in the day, even outbursts, We support to repair the rupture. When that tells children they can trust us as a safe person who is reliable, not just in moments of joy, in moments of regulation. Oh, I'm saying lots of hearts now. So true though, isn't it? People that have our back through thick and thin, happy, sad, and all of the in-between, through all of the emotions that flow, comfort and connection. And it's not just about physical touch and hugs. Not all children want that, depending on them or the experience that they're going through. Being able to have access to resources. So you will have heard in the interview, lots of autonomy and agency when we support children to be able to access without asking. Accessibility is huge, because even if child feeling is starting to feel a little uncomfortable, a little rough, noticing, oh, my drink bottle, noticing, my comfort area, I can go and do that, or that person's still there. So what can comfort and calming look like in your space for children? Getting access to a cool sip of water, a heat bag perhaps, a slow walk outside to notice things. We use lots of our senses. That can be very grounding to our nervous system, comforting. Hearing the birds, watching the clouds, a break from the action, a moment to stop and look at something interesting can be just what somebody needs as a reset to restart. So what are some of the things in your space? No doubt you're thinking right now about key things in your service that support children to feel a sense of belonging to your spaces. A comfort area, oh, thumbs up, heart's great. A beautifully aesthetically pleasing space. It looks inviting. It says, come on over here. This I love, and I love to show this. This is at a service that has a toaster and some bread at child's height so they can step up and they can make a snack. Again, this autonomy, and again, it depends on the children or the stage of the individuals and the groups that you have, but just knowing what might add that sense of comfort to a child. It could be being able to do that. It might be the smell or the aroma of the toast or the bread being cooked. Lots of things bring comfort in our space. These moments of connection. And we are, as I've said all night tonight, so invested in our spaces with all of those behavioral landscape things that I talked about earlier, the way we greet, the way we notice, not just at the start of the day, throughout the day, when somebody wakes up, when somebody comes around the corner from playing on in a particular area outside, and we, oh, hello, where did you pop up from? All of these things bring children to the understanding that this person's in this space. This person notices me and what I'm doing. And of course, children support each other to maintain their comfort level when dysregulated. And I know Kay and Anne-Marie talked about that too. We also know that routines and transitions impact how children feel, influence how settled a child is. This sense of security is what helps children to feel steady again when they're feeling unsteady. And sometimes routines and transitions can create that feeling of unsteadiness. So you will have access to all of these slides. You have access to be able to watch this webinar all over again if you want to. And of course, you can reach out to me. I still can't believe that there were over 700 of you that wanted to spend time with me. I might actually look at the chat to see if there's anything that you might particularly need me to answer. What are we hearing? Oh, I'm hearing from Amy, having a routine and a flow of the day so children know what happens next and when their parents will be back can be comforting. Many, what have we got from somebody here? I'm doing lots of these things every day, which is amazing, but it's encouraged me to improve them. Fantastic. I love that. What else? Having a routine. Oh, children having their own locker where they can keep their belongings, their hat, their drink bottle. Fantastic. A family tree of their photos of their families can be comforting. What else have we got here? I'm loving these ideas. I'm glad I checked this chat because you guys are the experts in your space. What else have we got? Anything else? Timely and lovely sharing. Yeah, there's a lot going on in our sector, and I think just to remind each other of the valuable work we do, but all those little tiny things we do each and every day, it makes a massive difference to the long-term mental health for children. Oh, more hearts. You guys are just divine. I'll have to come back to you guys, I think. You guys bring me joy. Okay, I think, thanks for my passion on the topic. Yeah, I am definitely passionate about this. My children might beg to differ, but I believe I am. Very useful. Okay. Love the brilliant information. Love the confirmation of many things and new ideas. I'm glad you had new ideas, Jane. Excellent. Thank you for the refresh to my care routine. Excellent. This is what I love to hear. I'm really, really pleased that you found, by the look of this, it valuable, informative. I think high turnover rate in our sector has large implications for this practice. Yeah, it absolutely can, which is why I think it's so important that we invest in high quality practice and commitment, which is what you guys obviously are doing. And I think that certainly elevates aspects and educators in our sector. All right. I think, my goodness, so many comments. You guys are amazing. Where would parents get support in dealing with a highly anxious attachment style? There's a whole list of resources, references at the end of this presentation. I think Raising Children Network is also very good, in addition to obviously New South Wales Family Daycare and PD in your pocket. Raising Children's Network, Australian Childhood Foundation, they have some amazing resources that you can download. And I suppose really it's these experiences that we role model to our families to give and share with them what you're doing every day. So you guys are probably going to be the most valuable resource to your families, letting them know all these little tips and tricks that we do to support a stronger attachment that really does alter children's internal working model. So families can absolutely benefit from what we've talked about tonight. Okay. I would like to thank you once again. If anybody has any further questions that they didn't feel like they wanted to write or say anything about, please just reach out to me directly or to New South Wales Family Daycare. We are more than happy to be able to answer your questions, and I thank you for your love. You guys are seriously just divine. So thank you so very much, and I look forward to seeing you next time. You will have a survey, I'm sure. So have me back and I'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for participating in this episode of PD in Your Pocket. This series was produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal peoples. If you'd like to watch or listen to other episodes in this series, or find out more information about this program, you can find us at our website at nswfdc.org.au/PD in your pocket.